Hi, this is Ken Adams from KMUZ, and we're going to have a conversation with Congressman Kurt Schrader, and I'm going to be joined by Alan Bouchon of CCTV, and welcome to the show, Congressman
Great,
Schrader.
Ken, it's good to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, there's a lot of things going on in Congress, and they've made some progress, it seems like, on some issues.
A little bit.
And what is the atmosphere like in Congress now? Is it a little bit more cooperative, or is it still fairly divided?
Good question. I'd say it's a little more cooperative right now. We've had some early successes. Everyone can, paint it every which way you want, but I will say that the due deference to Republican leadership has had a bunch of bills come out that have had the support of moderate Democrats like me in the past. I think they're trying to bring bills out that have some Democrat support. We had a big win on what we called the doc fix back east. Basically, it pays doctors enough that they will take seniors on as patients with Medicare, because as you may remember, they were supposed to get like a 22% cut in their reimbursement, and docs were not taking seniors because they were afraid they weren't going to be able to keep the doors open. So we actually fixed that for all time. In the past, we've always kicked the can down the road, typical Congress, but we stepped up. Nancy Pelosi worked with John Boehner to actually get the job done, and we had an overwhelming vote, 380 something to whatever at a 435, and on the Senate I think it was 92-8, an overwhelming vote on a major piece of legislation. I haven't seen that since I've been there, so it's pretty exciting.
Well, speaking of Medicare in those situations, the Affordable Care Act was passed about 5 years ago now, and we've seen some success, but I've noticed that here in Oregon, we've had our share of problems with the Cover Oregon coverage. And also, I've been running into a lot of folks here lately that paid their fees, their monthly fees to, whatever health care provider they had. But when the April 15th deadline came up for the IRS, they were now having to pay $400 or $600 extra dollars. And it kind of caught them by surprise.
Right.
And so I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about how that happened.
Well, I'll make two comments. One is Cover Oregon was the technology piece. Remember, everyone's going to just sign up online and figure out what health care plan they had. And that was a disaster. That was a total disaster. But folks shouldn't confuse that with health care that came under the Affordable Care Act. That part seems to be working quite well, actually. Premium increases have moderated dramatically, no longer going up at double-digit rates in our state. We have good competition. The nice thing is it doesn't appear to be a real partisan issue. As you know, former Governor Kitzhaber had both Republicans and Democrats voting to establish an exchange. So the good news is it seems to be working. Those people that had catastrophic plans may have a slightly different view, but if you want good preventative health care that really reflects your needs over your lifetime, I think it's going to be a great plan, and we got some kinks to work out. And one of those is the IRS one. As people know, well, maybe they don't know, you actually get a subsidy to help you pay and afford health care, so that as you get your bill, you're going to find that the Internal Revenue Service through the federal government, depending on your income level, is going to pay a chunk of that. It actually goes up to 400% of poverty level, so people even earning up to $95,000 or so can get some of their health care paid for. And if you're very low income, just above Medicare levels in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, you're going to have like 95% of your health care bill paid for by the Affordable Care Act. So it's actually geared to be affordable. Because it's based on how much income you earn, the IRS does a check at the end of the year. Whoops, you earn more money than you said, you thought you were going to at the beginning of the year. So they, to be honest with the taxpayer, say, hey, we got to claw back at least a little bit of that money, make you pay a little bit more. Or conversely, if you didn't earn that much, then you actually would get some money back at the end of the day. So bear with us. We're trying to work through that piece. I think the piece that you should try and remember, if you put up with the inconvenience near term, that in the long run, you're actually going to have affordable health care and good quality health care. Our docs and our hospitals in this state do a wonderful job.
Alan, I think you had some questions that you wanted to ask of the Congressman.
Well, yes, I appreciate that. And Congressman, we're so glad you're here. You're welcome at any time at CCTV. We know we're very close to your local office, and we sure like to give you the opportunity to talk with more people in our community. Understand that you've changed committee assignments this time, that you were on Agriculture and Budget and maybe even a third committee before, and now you're over to Energy and Commerce Committee. Can you tell us about that shift and what you'll be doing on Energy and Commerce Committee?
Oh, good. I appreciate the question because it sounds a little arcane, all these committee assignment names and stuff. As a veterinarian in the real world, family man, 35 years in, it was important for me to get on the Small Business, Budget, and Agriculture committees. Those I thought reflected a lot of what was going on in the district, reflected who I was and perhaps my areas of expertise. Been on those committees since it came to Congress, enjoyed them immensely. We just got done the Farm Bill in the Agriculture Committee last year. That's done every 5 years. It sets farm policy, sets nutrition policy. Food stamps or SNAP is a big part of the Farm Bill, probably 75% of the Farm Bill. A lot of folks don't realize that, but that's a big chunk of it. And it was a wonderful experience, guys. If you want to see good, mind-numbing committee testimony for 12 hours, but see it as bipartisan, the way Congress should work, I'd urge you to watch the House Agriculture Committee last year and the year before discussing the Farm Bill. It was really good. A lot of give and take. The chairman and ranking member, one a Republican, one a Democrat, worked really well together. They controlled our enthusiasms a little bit, so we were productive. And we had a great bipartisan vote finally last year on that. We were able to pass that out. So I enjoyed that. But that is the biggest deal for the Agriculture Committee. We played a little bit on the Dodd-Frank legislation to rein in Wall Street, if you will. Ours was on the Commodity Futures Trading Commission's side of it, not the security side, obviously. The small business group, we played heavily in lots of small business stuff, particularly during the recession when small businesses were struggling, trying to throw them lifelines, give them the ability to refinance things. That was fun. And the budget, I came from the state legislative background. I was the budget guy here a few years back, and I wanted to understand how the federal budget worked. But since the Farm Bill was done, we are out of the recession, thank goodness. Businesses are starting to get their feet underneath them here in the Mid-Willamette Valley too. I figured, well, where can I do the most good for my constituents? And that's on Energy and Commerce. Energy and Commerce Committee, it's a little bit of a misnomer because it actually has a jurisdiction that covers about 75% of all the bills in the United States Congress go through that committee. So I figured, where can my folks have the biggest bang for the buck? It's probably if I'm on that committee. And it deals with energy issues, it deals with telecom issues near and dear to CCTV's heart, deals with environmental issues, deals with commerce issues, deals with healthcare issues, deals with data security issues, a whole bunch of and range of things. The FDA, Federal Food and Drug Administration, so I still have my ag piece that I can work while I'm on that committee. And I am currently on the two subcommittees I thought, again, would be very helpful to my state and my district. That's the Environment Committee, and then on the Health Subcommittee. So we've already had a bunch of stuff before us. It seems to be bipartisan. We obviously have differences, but they're differences that seem to be ironed out. People want to iron them out. We had a bunch of bills, about 6 bills come out in the first 2.5, 3 weeks of session by voice vote. In other words, everyone agreed to them. I think the chairman and ranking member brought those up so that we get in the habit of working together, not working apart. And that's a big problem in DC. We, sometimes don't listen too well. We're good at talking, but we don't listen too well. And that's a key thing to make things happen.
Well, one of the people sometimes when they think of committees, they think of, gosh, it's going to take a lot of time and nothing's going to come out of this. But that's really where law is made, in committee. So in the Health Committee, is the Affordable Care Act, is that a primary topic of conversation? And if it is, how are things going on in Oregon? Is that something that you bring to the discussion as a part of the discussion?
Well, in the healthcare subcommittee, I think I bring 2 elements. One is Oregon's, and hopefully a little bit of mine, vast knowledge of how healthcare done right should be. Oregon has been a traditional leader nationwide in how to deliver coordinated quality care to people. We have docs and hospitals and community care organizations that are used to sharing risk, willing to work together. They're used to that. That's a bit of well, pretty much a foreign concept in much of this country. It's very silo-based healthcare. We think it's silo-based here. It's much more silo-based elsewhere. And they run you through a battery of tests that our docs and hospitals would say is a waste of time and a waste of your money. So we're bringing that perspective, I think, to Washington, D.C. The other thing I bring is a small businessman's perspective. A veterinary clinic for 33 years. I had to buy healthcare for my employees. I understand the puts and takes, what a real business, I think, is all about, and trying to bring that. There are some fixes we need to do to the Affordable Care Act. No bill is perfect. And so we're heavily involved in making a thoughtful accommodation there. And with regard to the Affordable Care Act itself, well, the Republicans always trot out the repeal health care, but even John Boehner said again and again, we're not going to repeal this thing at the end of the day. You'll see a play for it in the budget reconciliation process. The president will, of course, veto that. And I think most people, to Ken's point, are starting to see the benefits now.
Right.
I mean, it really is, it's not working perfect, but it's working much better than the old system with double-digit increases, no coordination of care. If you had prior conditions, you weren't covered. Your kids couldn't get covered up to age 26. So, and the costs are starting to moderate. That was a big thing. They've shown nationally that healthcare costs are at the increasing at the lowest rate in decades at this point in time. It's really made a huge difference. So I'm hopeful that, I'm on that committee, we can work through those. It was interesting to me that Republicans had a chance to beat the heck out of Sylvia Burwell, who's the head of the health department, HHS back east, dealing with the Affordable Care Act. There's a court case, as you know, going through talking about subsidies and,
right.
Can the federal government actually pay these subsidies on these other exchanges? And the discussion was tough but respectful. Okay, it was respectful, and I was very impressed, certainly how Sylvia handled herself and how my Republican colleagues handled themselves. They asked very tough questions, pointed, but not mean-spirited and not over the top, not insulting. And so far, I'm enjoying the committee.
One of the reasons that we're really glad, I'll just go quickly here so we can get back to Ken, that we're glad that you're on the committee is that the Telecoms, the Communications Subcommittee, chaired by Congressman Walden from Oregon's 2nd Congressional District, is most likely going to be rewriting federal telecom law. Probably nothing that's going to move in this session, but realistically in the 17-18 session is more likely to happen. And Congressman Walden has very few community TV centers. What people watching the program don't know is that we're joined by Tony Gonzalez from Canby and Melody Ashford from Willamette Falls in Oregon City. So in our district, this is stronger. We're able to do more in our community and put our community on TV and the internet a lot more. But Congressman Walden doesn't have that so much in his district. We're very hopeful that you can work with him, much like Congressman Walden and Congressman Blumenauer worked in the Gorge issue, to help him see some of the possibilities. So we're really appreciative that you're on the committee and hope that you get to work with Congressman Walden.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Greg has been a good friend. He's got a job, offline job as NRCC chair to kind of recruit candidates, even against me, but that's just the shape of the universe, the way it is. I think I view him as a colleague, a friend, if you will. We're teamed up with Peter DeFazio, and he and I on this Oregon and California railroad legislation, the so-called ONC stuff, trying to get more timber out of the woods in an environmentally sustainable manner. So we work with them all the time, and looking forward to doing that. Telecom's heating up. The FCC came out with its net neutrality rules. It's interesting. It's sort of controversial, but not. To me, it's interesting, Alan. Everyone, I think, is in favor of net neutrality, but we need to define that because it's in the eye of the beholder. And even listening to some of the big boys and girls that play out there, I think the principles that Wheeler articulated, they would agree with. It's just they don't like being regulated under Title II, the old Ma Bell network thing. So that, I think, with his ruling coming out, that's going to generate some thought. And I think Greg's got some things he wants to push through. He's done a lot of thinking on this for years. And I think with that decision by Wheeler coming out, we're going to actually get to it probably within the next 2 years. And in Washington, D.C. time, that's light years fast. That's really fast, within 1 or 2 years.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up about forestry, because I've had a couple of interviews recently with forestry people, and one of them was talking about the fact that when the Clinton era forestry practices were put into place, it created a situation where previously they had been putting more carbon into the atmosphere than they were taking out. And because of the cutback in forestry, they're now creating a huge carbon sink in the Northwest woods. And so this had a very beneficial effect. So that's one of the parts that you need to kind of consider when you're looking at various bills.
Absolutely. And I think we do that in our bill. What we're trying to do is find at least in our legislation, I think even the BLM has come out now with new rules to replace swapper in the Northwest Forest Plan that didn't work, because there was some harvest that was supposed to occur. And the trick, as you know, is to find out, there's a point at which the carbon sequestration by trees is pretty good in their early growth development. But you get out past 200 years and all of a sudden not so much. Old growth is a revered status here in our great state, and some old growth needs to be protected, but they become less useful as carbon sinks as time goes on. So what we're trying to do is find where's the sweet spot between keeping our communities healthy and our forests healthy. I don't think they're necessarily incompatible. Some people would think that's the case. And I point out to a lot of people that once you make a good old chair or a wooden table, that carbon's sequestered. So, the trick is to have good forestry practices that don't till up the ground. You replant appropriately after you do harvest, so you create the new carbon sinks of the future, and you have that ongoing cycle. And we're trying to figure that out. That's the devil's in the details, Ken.
Well, it was this last week I went up to Xena Forest, and they're doing more oak instead of fir, and they actually now have a mill. And they're trying to get local wood because there aren't any really oak mills here, and that's used for furniture and things like that. That is very beneficial. Plus, they were pointing out that when you leave debris on the ground instead of burning it, it actually seeps into the soil, the carbon, and it sequesters there as opposed to burning it.
Right. Well, hopefully we get to better policy. We won't have these wildfires burning and putting a lot of stuff into the air. So, I'm also got a wildfire bill. I'm teaming up with Congressman Simpson from Idaho, and I actually Senator Wyden and Senator Crapo are sponsors of the same legislation on the Senate side, trying to get our natural disasters treated as disasters, just like floods and hurricanes and all that other stuff we see down south and back east. Most Westerners are feeling a little discriminated against. We have a disaster fund that's used for everything except our biggest natural disaster, which is wildfire. So we're trying to change that thinking a little bit. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, also, you were talking about the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and I had a concern because last year Clive Bundy they were talking about taking his cattle off the...
Because he wasn't paying his fees.
He wasn't paying his fees. And we had a situation here in Oregon last week where some gold miners were at the local BLM talking about their situation. But again, they weren't following the rules on U.S. property. And it's not like it's theirs. It's our property. And I guess the problem that I saw was that it seems like nothing has been done about Mr. Bundy. And so if I'm a rancher down in Nevada and I'm paying my fees, I would really feel picked on because nothing has happened to him. So I was wondering if maybe you could say what's going on. I know that you're not in the committee and part of the administration, but it's a concern, I think.
Well, it's a legitimate concern by a lot of folks. I don't, to be honest with you, I haven't kept up with the latest on the Bundy situation. I fall into the camp of one of those that was upset that he wasn't paying his fees like every other darn rancher out there. I mean, why does he get the exception and nobody else? That's not right. That's un-American. I don't see BLM going after him. I mean, with the gold mine thing, I talked to some folks at BLM the other day, and there was all these wild accusations like they were going to come in and have a big armed confrontation. That BLM doesn't operate that way, for gosh sakes. I mean, that's just a lot of fear mongering by different extreme right wing groups. That's sad. I think gold mining has its place. Any sort of mining, as long as they do it according to the law, that's fine. No one should get special advantage, and you just have to play by the rules, or you don't get a chance to do it. You get kicked off, and you shouldn't be allowed to participate in that activity. It's the taxpayers that are subsidizing this at the end of the day. My 2 cents is the fees are very reasonable. Frankly, if there have been market studies done, particularly on grazing fees, where they're well below what a market rate fee would be. And some of that's fine. There's probably, again, some sort of sweet spot between the federal government encouraging good economic enterprise and giving away too much at the taxpayer expense. We're in a tight budget right now. As you know, we've got some things going on that we've got to get after, but we're trying not to make our debt much worse for the next generation. Well, we got to collect the right amount of fees from these guys at the end of the day. Fair is fair.
And part of that is to try to keep overgrazing from happening on these federal lands.
Well, yeah, and a lot of those fees go back into protecting that land,
right?
Replanting, making sure it's there for the next guy down the road.
Well, I want to thank you, Congressman Schrader, for coming in, and Alan for helping with the conversation with Congressman Kurt Schrader.
So great to have you here, Congressman Schrader. We'll be talking with you more about this issue of franchising and
yes.
these local companies and cable companies and phone companies paying for this private use of a public right-of-way to do what we do and do what others in the community are doing. We're really happy that you're here with us today and that we can work with you on these issues.
We'll be glad to do it. Thanks.